Welcome to session 18 of Through the Bible in 90 Days. Today we will look at three takeaways from Judges chapter 3, verse 28 through Judges chapter 15, verse 12. How God's deliverance is not only about his power, but also his perfect timing and plan. How God can use ordinary, even flawed individuals to fulfill his extraordinary purposes. How God's strength is most evident when we are weak and dependent on him. I'm Dr. J. David Taylor. Let's get started. Wow. Takeaway one, God's deliverance is not only about his power, but also his perfect timing and plan. Now in Judges chapter 3, verse 28 to 30, we see how God uses Ehud to deliver Israel from the Moabites. Ehud, a left-handed judge, was raised up by God at just the right moment to defeat King Eglon. Now this story reminds us that God often raises up unexpected leaders at exactly the right time to accomplish his purposes. For us, this is a reminder that God's deliverance often comes in ways we don't expect, and he works in his perfect timing. When we face trials, we must trust that God will raise up the help we need at the right moment, just as he did for Israel. In Judges chapter 3, verse 20, it said, "And Ehud said, I have a message from God unto thee. And he arose out of his seat." In Judges chapter 3, verse 30, it says, "So Moab was subdued that day under the hand of Israel, and the land had rest 80 years. My God, 80 years. Wow. Takeaway two, see, God can use extraordinary or ordinary, even flawed individuals to fulfill his extraordinary purposes. See, the story of Deborah in Judges chapter 4, verses 4 to 5 shows that God can use women, men, and anyone who is available to him. Deborah was a prophetess and a judge who led Israel in a time of crisis. In her leadership, we see God using an ordinary woman in an extraordinary way. Similarly, God often calls ordinary people to do extraordinary things for his kingdom. See, our limitations or past experience don't disqualify us from God's calling. I need to say that again. Our limitations or past experiences don't disqualify us from God's calling. Instead, our availability and obedience to him allows him to work through us. In Judges chapter 4, verse 4, it says just this, "And Deborah, a prophetess, the wife of Lepidoth, she judged Israel at that time." In Judges chapter 4, verse 8, KJV, it says, "And Barak said unto her, If thou wilt go with me, then I will go. But if thou wilt not go with me, then I will not go." Okay, takeaway number three. See, God's strength is most evident when we are weak and dependent on him. So in Judges chapter 6, verses 11 to 16, we see the call of Gideon. Gideon was initially hesitant, doubting his abilities and questioning God's presence with Israel. Yet God used Gideon, despite his doubts, to deliver Israel from the Midianites. See, this story shows us that God's power is often displayed when we are at our weakest. When we rely on our own strength, we limit God. But when we depend on his strength, we can do mighty works through us. He can do mighty works through us. We must learn to trust God even when we feel insufficient, knowing that he will provide what is needed to accomplish his own will. Judges chapter 6, verse 12, KJV says this, "And the angel of the Lord appeared unto him and said unto him, The Lord is with thee, thou mighty man of valor." Judges chapter 6, verse 15, KJV says this, "And he said unto him, O my Lord, wherewith shall I save Israel? Behold, my family is poor in Manasseh, and I am the least in my father's house." Wow. What if I told you that God could use your weakness for his glory? What if your doubts and limitations were the very things that that allow God's power to shine through you? The book of Judges gives us countless examples of God using ordinary, flawed people to accomplish his will. From the unlikely heroism of Ehud to the leadership of Deborah and the reluctant faith of Gideon, God demonstrates time and again that his strength is most evident when we are weak and dependent on him. The question is, will you allow God to use you in spite of your fears and your doubts? See, the challenge we face is that we often look at our own shortcomings and believe that God cannot use us because of our weakness. We may feel unqualified, unprepared, and unsure of ourselves, just as Gideon and even Ehud. But the real issue isn't our ability. It's whether we are willing to step out in faith, trusting that God will equip us and use us for his purposes. See, too often we allow fear and doubt to hold us back, forgetting that God's power is made perfect in our weakness. See, what if we changed our mindset? Instead of focusing on our limitations, what if we embrace our weaknesses as an opportunity for God to show his strength? Just like Gideon, who was hesitant but obedient to God's call, we too can step forward in faith, trusting that God will provide everything we need. When we rely on our own strength, we miss out on the incredible power of God. But when we depend on God, he does the extraordinary through our ordinary lives. Right now, this is the moment for a breakthrough in your life. Will you trust that God can use you in spite of your weaknesses? Will you step out in faith knowing that it is not about your abilities, but about God's power working through you? See, the story of Gideon teaches us that God uses our hesitations, our doubts, and our weaknesses to accomplish his great purposes. We may not have all the answers, but we have a God who is faithful to fulfill his promises. It's time to stop holding back and start living in the truth that God's strength is sufficient for us. I challenge you today. Will you step out in faith, trusting that God alone will equip you for the task he has set before you? Will you let go of your fear and embrace the truth that God's strength is made perfect in your weakness? Today is the day to take a step forward in obedience, just like Ehud, Deborah, and Gideon. God, my friend, has a plan for you. Don't let your doubts or limitations hold you back from experiencing the power of God working through you. Will you trust God today? I have 3 declarations reflecting my own willingness to align with God's divine will. I declare, J.T. Taylor declares, that I will step out in faith, trusting that God can use my weaknesses for his glory. I declare that I will fully rely on God's strength, knowing that his power is made perfect in my weakness. I declare that I will obey God's calling regardless of my doubts, regardless of my fears, trusting that he, God alone, will equip me for every task he has called me to. My time is up. I'm Dr. J. David Taylor, and I will see you next time.